Howdy bubs and welcome back. This video we're going to be jumping into creating a hit flash effect for our character and our enemy, so that way whenever the enemy is hit by either the melee weapon or our crossbow, there is a flash effect. So the first thing we're going to do is actually create a shader. We're going to go into here, create shader. A shader actually has two portions to it. The first one we're not going to touch. The second part we will. What we're going to do in here is we're going to copy over this variable, and what we're going to do is update it to be equal to a vector for of 1.0, 1.0, 1.0. These are the RGB values maxed out. And GL underscore frag color dot A. And I'm going to rename this to be shader white. And this is actually all we need to do with the shader. Just understand that this maxes out the RGB value, so that way we have a white outline on top of our sprite. Now that we have the shader, let's go ahead and start working on the code that will implement this. So first up, jumping into our melee weapon, in our step event, we of course immediately destroy our enemy. What I want to do instead is pull in a new script that we're going to create called damage target. What I want this to do is, of course, damage our target whenever we hit them. And I'm going to specify how much I damage them by. I'm just going to go with melee weapon, 5 damage. Let's create a new script. Damage target. And we pass in one parameter, and that is damage. How much damage does our target receive? In here, I'm going to reference the hit points of my object, whatever this is. If we're going to follow this pattern, we need to make sure all objects that can receive damage have hit points, called HP. So make sure you stay consistent with whatever system you decide to use. We subtract this much damage from them. And then I want them to flash 3. But what is flash? This is going to be represented of essentially how many frames I want to have our object flash when it gets hit. We need to, of course, create a script that will do this for us. This is going to be Hitflash. Inside here, if my flash value is greater than 0, I'm going to decrement my flash value, flash minus minus, shader underscore set, and I'm going to use my shader white. Then I'm going to make sure to draw self and then reset the shader. What gets done here is, so long as we have a frame that we're supposed to be flashing, I decrease the number of frames by 1, and I set the shader to be white. I then draw the sprite with the shader over it, and then reset the shader back to its default. Let's jump into our enemy. Our enemy is the one thing that can get hit. So in my create event, and my HP, I'm going to just set it to 10. And my flash value is, of course, 0. We have no flash at the start. Then we need to make sure anything that can flash has a new event. Under draw, we need to make sure we have our stuff to implement the hit flash. Of course, you want to draw yourself no matter what. Otherwise, you're going to run into issues where your sprite doesn't get drawn. And then I'm going to reference my script Hitflash. Hitflash will take a check of what our current flash value is. If the flash value is greater than 0, after it draws itself, it'll also draw the white outlined version of ourself and reset the shader. With the projectile, we can go ahead and add in a collision event with our enemy object. Go ahead and damage the enemy. How do we do this? With other being the enemy object. We go ahead and do damage target for 1 health, and then make sure to destroy instance_destroy to delete the projectile after it has hit a target. Now we can go ahead and see how this looks. And there we go, we have a nice little flash. And if I try to do my melee attack, we see it flashes as it hits the 2 sprites. Now I don't have any code put into place to actually remove anything yet. That we can mess around with later once we start dealing with an actual enemy sprite and death animations. But we now have a convenient script that damages the target and implements a flashing impact on our enemy. Now, if you intend the player to suffer a similar effect, potentially lose health, and flash, you need to make sure for your player you add a flash value and initialize it to 0, and add in a draw event to address Hitflash. We draw self. Remember, if you do not draw self, nothing is going to be drawn. And then call Hitflash, and then we're set. That way, later on, whenever you implement something to damage the player will also flash white when it gets hit. Again, to recap, we had our shader. We went over to the .fsh portion and added in this line, setting the RGB values to max so that I can overlay our sprite. We implemented 2 scripts, damage target to deal damage to a target and set its flash value, and hit flash if there is a flash value greater than 0 to set the shader white active so that way we can get a white outline on top of our sprite. We then update our enemy code to have health and a flash value, and we update our draw event so that way it draws ourself and then implements hit flash if it is relevant. I then went into our O melee, called in our damage target code, went to O projectile and collision, damaged the target and then destroyed itself. And then over into our player, included a flash value and implemented the draw self and hit flash for our draw event. That's all I have for y'all today. If you have any questions or need any assistance, just let me know in class. Otherwise, everyone have a good one. I just wanted to say thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Shout out to my bad bubs, my top 5, my day ones. Y'all have always been there for me. Next up, my baby bubs, the next 5. I always love y'all's support. And finally, for everyone else, any little bit helps. Thank you to all my basic bubs for supporting me along my journey. If you want to continue receiving notifications, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell button.